Adhyaatma Yoga by Shree SachchidAnandEndra Saraswatee SwAmeeji, Hole Narsipura, Karnataka. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Dr. Krishnamurti Shastri, Dambe Punacha, Karnataka. So this is a work by Sri SachchidAnandEndra Saraswatee SwAmeeji, Adhyaatma Yoga. In that we have seen already 9 points. Today is from the 10th point. Unless and until we transcend the realm of duality, that is the body, the mind, the intellect, and the ego, and the outer world, along with the concepts of infinite time, space, causation, etc., it is not possible to reach the eternal truth. So, the real aspirant should know this truth, and he has to turn away from all these non-eternal results which are materialistic, mystic, or terrestrial. He has to fix his attention on the cognition of the true nature of the self. Then only he can get the complete salvation from the bondage of samsara. This truth is stated in Kathopanishad. The boy Nachiketa asks the following question to Yamadharma, who is the deity of death. Nachiketa said, "If I am fit and you too, sir, are pleased with me, then tell me of that thing which you see as different from virtue, different from vice, different from cause and effect, and different from the past and the future." In Kathopanishad. And it is a very important thing that it is possible to get easily this firm establishment in the true nature of the self, which is eternal, by listening to the exposition by a guru of self-knowledge. The guru is one who is well established in his nature, in his true nature of the self. This is also said in the above Upanishad. See the commentary of Shankara on these stanzas of Katha Upanishads, Katha Upanishad 128 and 129. Hence, it is very difficult to attain the highest goal of Adhyatma for the common man without the help of the teachings of the Upanishads and the Guru. If he has the proper ideas of renunciation, that is about the non-eternal nature of all achievements, and has complete faith in God or the Lord, then he will have the proper Guru, and he will very easily cognize his true nature as the self who is eternal and non-dual. This is the final benefit of the Adhyatma Shastra. So, next, Adhyatma Yoga, first point, we have already discussed about the word Adhyatma. Now, we shall know the meaning of Adhyatma Yoga. Usually, the word yoga denotes Patanjali Yoga, Raja Yoga, etc. But according to Prasthanatraya Bhashya, the yoga is quite different. In the Vedanta Shastras, Shankara has accepted the first 5 limbs of Patanjali Yoga, that is Yama, controlling the sense organs, Niyama, controlling the organs of actions, Asana, method of sitting comfortably for a long time, Pranayama, regulation of breath for obtaining the tranquility of the mind, and Pratyahara, withdrawing the mind from hankering after the enjoyment of outer objects. These 5 limbs of Patanjali Yoga are indispensable for the students of Vedanta also, especially for a student of Adhyatma Yoga. To develop these qualities, Karma Yoga and Upasanas are helpful for the common man. This is also corroborated in the Bhagavad Gita, which says that Karma Yoga leads to Dhyana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga leads to Jnana through Bhakti Yoga. Here, the Dhyana Yoga itself is Adhyatma Yoga. According to Patanjali, there are 8 limbs or steps in yoga. The first 5 have already been described. The remaining are dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, but these 3 are not accepted in the Vedanta Shastra. These are words like dharana, dhyana found in Prasthanatraya Bhashyas. For example, in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated In the eighth discourse, it has been declared that the yoga of concentration or dharana, also in the Taittiriya Upanishad, besides such practices as concentration, meditation, etc., the words dhyana and dharana used in the context have the same meaning as they have in Patanjali Yoga. These are only the concentrated meditation on Omkara or on any form of the Lord as prescribed in the Vedas. Shankara has opined in the Sutra Bhashya that Patanjali Yoga is a dualistic school. This is because the Patanjali yogins contend that there is multiplicity of the self and accept reality of the primordial matter of the universe, that is Prakriti, and the existence of Lord besides the above two. But in Vedanta, it is determined that the only non-dual Brahman appears as all these owing to ignorance. This is also stated in Sutra Bhashya as, but the followers of Sankhya and Yoga are dualists and they do not perceive the unity of the self. Thus, the words like Yoga or Sankhya used in Vedanta. For example, in Bhagavad Gita, they are not related to Patanjali Yoga or Kapila Sankhya, but they denote a process of discrimination and concentration according to the teachings of Vedanta, which rely on universal intuitional experience and a comprehensive vision of life. Third point, in Adhyaatma Yoga, it must be made clear that Adhyaatma Yoga is not related whatsoever to Patanjali Yoga. We shall now discuss the meanings of Adhyatma Yoga according to the Upanishads. The words Adhyatma Yoga are described in Kathopanishad as developing concentration of mind on the self and thereby it is meditation. Shankara has stated in his Bhashya that concentration of the mind on the self after withdrawing it from the outer objects is Adhyatma Yoga. The process of this yoga has been delineated in the Kathopanishad in 1.3.13. This has also been clearly explained in Sutra Bhashya 1.4.1. It is as follows. The discriminating man should merge that mind into the cognizing self. He should merge the cognizing self into the Mahan Atma, great soul. He should merge the great soul into the peaceful self. 1.3.13. The idea implied is this: he should merge the organ of speech into the mind, which means that he should give up all the external activities of the organs of speech, etc., and continue to act only through the mind. And because the mind has a tendency to think of objects, he should discover the defect in thinking of pros and cons, and then he should hold the mind confined steadfastly in the intellect that has the faculty of determination and is referred to by the term cognizing self. That intellect, again, he should withdraw into the great soul, the experiencer, or into the actual intellect, sharpened through meditation. The great soul is, however, to be established by him in the peaceful self, in the Supreme Purusha under consideration, that is to say, in the highest goal. Thus, the Adhyatma Yoga is not like the other meditations which are of nature of Kartru Tantra, meaning that which depends on the will and wish of the doer, but it is Vastu Tantra, meaning observing the facts as they are by concentrating the mind on them to cognize them in their true perspective. This is the third point in Adhyatma Yoga. Next, fourth. This Adhyatma Yoga is called as Nidhihasana, and in the sixth chapter of the Gita, this Nidhihasana is described as Dhyana Yoga. The complete sixth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita reveals the process of this Dhyana Yoga with its accessories. In this very Bhagavad Gita, in the following contexts also, this Dhyana Yoga or Adhyatma Yoga is prescribed. 13.24, 18.52. The same Adhyatma Yoga is also called as Manonigraha Yoga by Gaudapada in his Mandukya Karikas from 341 to 348. So, in all these places, the practice of Adhyatma Yoga, its accessories, the obstacles during the practice, and the removal of the obstacles are described. Fifth point. To practice this Adhyatma Yoga or Nidhihasana, Dhyana Yoga or Manonigraha Yoga, an aspirant at first should get Atma Pratyaya, meaning the firm conviction about the real nature of the self, by listening to the process of discrimination taught by the Guru and the Shastra, and he must know the process of Manana, that is, method of reflection on the firm ground of intuition and adopting the reasons occur according to the teachings of the Guru and the Shastras. After this, to take a stand in his true nature of the self and cognize the pervasiveness of the self in all the dualistic phenomena, he has to practice this Nidhihasana or Adhyaatma Yoga. The actual process of Nidhihasana is as follows. A. The essence of the totality of experience of the outer world is the five kinds of sensations only, that is, sound, touch, form of color, taste, and smell. Except for the except for and apart from these five sensations, there is no world as such. To prove the existence of this external world, our sense organs are the only criteria. Bereft of these fivefold sensations got through the sense organs, there is no proof whatsoever available for the existence of the world. So, the sense organs are the self of the external world. Here, the significant features of the self are residing inside, pervading the outer thing, being independent, being subtle. For these four significant features, see Katha Upanishad 1:310 and Bhagavad Gita 3:42. The significant features of the non-self are quite unlike the self. For example, appearing outside, being pervaded by the self, being dependent on the self, being gross. According to these criteria, one should determine the nature of the self, considering the whole gamut or range of things from the outside world to innermost self. In this process, the first step is sublating the outer world by means of sense organs, meaning one cognizes that only through the vibrations or sensations of the sense organs one comes to experience the outer world, and that there is no outer world as such apart from these sensations of the sense organs. Once having determined this, he is not drawn towards the outer world, or he will not be attracted by the objects of the outer world. The result of this firm conviction is called as sublating the outer world by means of the sense organs. B. After this, one should investigate the source of the sense organs. Then he comes to the conclusion that the mind is the self of the sense organs. Here also, residing inside, pervading outer things, etc., are the four common features. All the above stated methods should be applied to the mind and the sense organs or the outer things. So, here the sadhaka gets a firm conviction that the mind alone appears as the sense organs and outer world with the concepts of infinite time, space, causation, etc. This is called as the sublation of the sense organs by means of the mind. Here the sadhaka remains in the form of the mind only. He is an embodiment of the mind, as it were. There is no independent existence for the world or sense organs apart from the mind. Next, C. Then he has to proceed inwards towards the intellect. Here, the faculty of determining and objectifying the agitation of the mind is called as intellect or buddhi. This intellect is the self of the mind. By keen observation, one should sublate the mind by means of the intellect, adopting the previous way of reasoning. Here, the aspirant remains as the intellect. For him, there is no mind or sense organs or the outer world independently as such, apart from the intellect. Next, D. Then this sadhaka should discern or divine the stuff of the intellect, that is, I sense or ego. Ahamkara. This ego objectifies the intellect in the manner, my intellect is capable of understanding such and such a thing, or is incapable, etc. Hence, this I sense is the inner stuff of the intellect and also is the enjoyer of pleasure or pain. Meaning, though the pleasure and pain are related to the inner organ, this I sense identifies itself with those feelings of pleasure and pain, etc. So, it is called as enjoyer. When this I sense is described from the standpoint of the microcosm, individual, then it is called as a jiva. But when this I sense is described from the standpoint of the macrocosm, meaning the cosmic I, or the I sense of all the creatures together, or the first I sense in the universe, it is called as Hiranyagarbha or Mahan Atma. This is a peculiar expression of Vedanta or a technical term. To summarize, one should sublate his intellect by means of his I sense. All the other features should be observed as described above during all these steps or stages. Hence, the I sense is the self of the whole phenomena. Where there is the I sense, invariably, that is I sense means ahambhava or ahankara, invariably it appears with its whole retinue of its respective world. Here it is very essential to remember and intuitively reason out that the ego of the waking and the ego of the dream are not the same. In fact, they have no relationship with each other whatsoever. Each ego projects its own respective world. Where there is no I sense, there is no trace of any kind of any world. Therefore, we have to take the macrocosm along with the microcosm, and this is the peculiar method of Vedanta. To get this confirmed, we have to observe life with a comprehensive vision on the basis of the universal acceptance of intuitional experience. When the waking ego appears, along with it, the whole waking world appears to exist. This is the same case with the dream state. And in deep sleep, when these two types of I senses disappear, there is no trace whatsoever of any world or duality. Hence, it is evident that this I sense is the self of all the phenomena. Next, E. At last, the aspirant should objectify his I sense or ego, taking a stand in the true nature of his own self, that is, the witness of the I sense. To objectify the I sense, the only method is through discrimination, and with the deep concentration. When one says there is I sense, then automatically he takes his stand in his true nature of the self, who is the witness of the ego or I sense. There is no need of any effort to take a stand in the true nature of the self, because that is one's own nature of being, and always he is that. Due to this wrong identification with not selves like the ego, etc., one misconceives that I am so and so. By adopting this process of discrimination with the concentrated mind, according to this Adhyaatma Yoga, as described here, one ceases his identification with the ego and all the rest. For example, when one discriminates that the I sense appears in the waking state as well as in the dream state separately, and it disappears completely in deep sleep, then at that time he has ceased his identification with the I sense, with his I sense. But when he wants to express this intuition, at once he takes the form of I sense and uses the I sense and the instruments in its retinue to express. At that time, he gets confused and says that I knew the absence of the I sense in deep sleep through my intellect or mind. But the fact is quite different. Hence, to take a stand in the true nature of the self, there is no other way than the process of discrimination, viveka, atma, anatma, viveka. This is explained by Shankara in his commentary on Sutra Bhashya 114. In the excerpt which we have given at the beginning of this topic, the last phrase is, the great soul, ego or cosmic I, is however to be established by him in the peaceful self, in the supreme Purusha under consideration, that is to say in the highest goal. The meaning of this phrase is explained here under, that is F. Through the practice of this Adhyaatma Yoga, at last one cognizes that my true nature of being is beyond the I sense or ego, ahambhava. It is beyond that, beyond the ahambhava. When one cognizes this truth, then he remains unto himself as of the nature of the witness of the ego, sakshi bhava. Hence, to know the self is to the self, is to be the self, and to be the self is to cease the identification with the not self. This utterance of Sri Ramana Maharshi is to be remembered by the sadhaka of Adhyaatma Yoga. Here the sadhaka has traversed inwards, as it were, with a concentrated mind followed by discrimination, and has arrived at the brink of all duality and at the very core of life. And he himself has remained as the witness of the ego or as the pure self. After this, he has to observe, as he has done during the previous steps, the pervasive nature of the witness in all the things from the ego to the outer world. So, there is no independent existence of the so called not self apart from the true nature of the self. And there is no possibility of distinguishing the self and the rest in time or in space, because the concepts of time, space, and causation are within the jurisdiction of the I sense only. So, the non self itself is not in time or in space. The very ideas of time, space, etc. are included in the non self. And the true nature of the self, as he is beyond the I sense, he is not within the jurisdiction of time and space. So, it is impossible to say that the self is the first and not self or non self is the second. Strictly speaking, the whole phenomena of non selves is pervaded by the self only, just as the water pervades the waves in and through, or the clay pervades the pot. Hence, there is no non self as such apart from the real self. When one does not know the real nature of the self, then he misconceives the self as if he is non self. He is the non-self. This truth is confirmed by the in the following Shruti passage. Because when there is duality, as it were, then one smells something, one thinks something, one knows something. But when to the knower of Brahman everything becomes the self, then what should one see? Through what? What should one know, and through what? For this reason, Shankara has declared in the Sutra Bhashya about the causation between the Brahman, the self, and the world in the following manner. As the spaces within pots or jars are not different from the cosmic space, or as water in a mirage is non different from a sandy desert, since they sometimes appear and sometimes vanish away, and as such their nature cannot be defined. Similarly, it is to be understood that this diverse phenomenal world of the experiences and things experienced have no existence apart from Brahman. By this, we can conclude that Brahman or the self is the reality and the world is a false appearance. By this process, when one cognizes the falsification of the whole phenomena of the dualistic world, including the I sense, then he establishes himself naturally in the non dual absolute self. This is the final result of Adhyaatma Yoga or Nidhihasana. In the next session, we will see misconceptions. Thank you. Hare Rama.